this is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about Amber Heard has just fired her whole, PR team and stuff because she doesn't like the headlines and stuff that she's getting. She should be testifying this week. Maybe it'll come Wednesday or a little earlier. I think the original plan was for her to testify last, but I'm not sure if they're still going to do that. Johnny Depp does have a very high legal bar to cross as far as winning his suit. He could be rewarded. They could rule that nobody's getting nothing. I don't know, but it seems like people who are, at least when they're polling people who are actually like invested in the trial, have been watching it. Most people think that he's telling the truth, but she hasn't had her time to counter. So I think probably the most I'll end up probably doing is like a 10 top takeaway, but I kind of want to wait until she at least has her say. My gut instinct though, I never jumped on that Johnny did it train. But I am just absolutely baffled just in general. Like, he was with his baby mama forever. And then Amber Heard came along and then he married her. Now it's all this drama. So it's pretty crazy. That's not the only thing we're gonna be talking about, which I find it pretty interesting. That the PR firm that she hired was a bunch of former Obama people. We're also going to be talking about the White House Correspondence dinner, just a little bit of tidbits here and there, some kind of jarring juxtaposition with some of the jokes and the laughter and what they're laughing about, considering that some of it's about how terrible things are in the country right now. And you do need to allow some space for humor, I believe. And one joke that I posted on Facebook, some people are like, oh, that's a good joke. Some people are like, this is disgusting. How dare anyone joke about this? And so I want to talk about it because I thought it was a pretty interesting reaction when I posted some of the jokes. Also, there is a huge decline, as we've known, within public schools, not just because of the pandemic, but also before that. But now they don't have the big bundles of cash. I'm sure they still have lots of cash, but the COVID relief was propping them up a bit. But now schools are going to have to make some really big cuts because kids aren't showing up because they're going homeschool, they're doing private school or whatever. A lot of people really missed their big opportunity here to make things better. No wonder why a lot of these teachers unions really wanted to hold on to the pandemic for absolutely as long as they could. And also, everybody's been talking about Biden's new Ministry of Truth and the DHS and their whole, we're going to have a disinformation board, and the person that they put over is someone who has spread quite a bit of misinformation. So hopefully all this gets struck down very quickly. But man, this is a bad route to go for the Biden administration. Just one bad thing after another. But before we jump into it, I want to encourage you all to go to blacktnews.com, check out different articles that I have on my website. I heard Karl Rove mention my good friend Christina Caramo, who's running for Secretary of State. She got the nomination. Well, not the nomination. Technically, it was the endorsement for the nomination. So she's going to be on the ballot in November for Secretary of State, running against Jocelyn Benson. And so Karl Rove was talking about on Fox about how he didn't understand some of the moves that Trump was making, and some of the people he was backing he thought were going to lose. And so he did mention the race in Michigan, and he said that Trump had pushed for these election deniers to win, and he thinks that they're both going to lose in November because that's going to be the only message that they have, or going to be the message. And that's just not true. Maybe I should tweet that article at Karl Rove because there's a lot of issues that have been going on with the Secretary of State office, especially when they opted to keep it permanently closed. We'll go to online appointments. You have to make it online. And you had a lot of people who didn't think that made a lot of sense, especially when you go to Ohio's Secretary of State branches were open. Um, and then Jocelyn Benson kept saying, "Well, this is what people want." It's like, really? Because people are having a very hard time here. So, Karl Rove missed the mark, in my opinion, in that regard. So I'll probably tweet in my article about Christina Caramo. But if you haven't read it, go ahead and go to blacktnews.com and read it and share it, because it is very important that we read in November. And I've let my bias known. Christina is a good friend of mine, and I know a lot of people in the mainstream media are attacking her heavily. So I just want a different perspective out there. So again, very biased. She's my friend, but she's a good person, and I think deserves to beat Jocelyn Benson because Jocelyn Benson's very bad at her job. I do want to encourage you guys to follow all across my different social media platforms on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. Even if you like watching on Facebook, make sure that you're following also on YouTube as well. That does help me out. Please check out different merchandise that we have on the website, like the "You Are Not That Special" mugs. Also got those in shirts, got the black tea mugs, got different shirts like the "My Money, My Business" shirts, and so on. So you guys can check that kind of stuff out. If you enjoy what I do here, please go to blacktnews.com/donate and consider leaving a donation on the website. Anything that you guys would like to give to support, I very much appreciate it. It does help. I want to thank Brian Mission Pack. I'm in the studio today. If I say something today that triggers you, they don't care. I don't care. It doesn't work like that. They just like uplifting conservative voices. So I am grateful to them for this opportunity, as always, to stream in their studio. So first thing I want to talk about, we all like to start off with some funnies here. So I guess the funnies is debatable today because there's some people who like these jokes, some people didn't like these jokes. Trevor Noah was, I guess, the main speaker at the White House Correspondence Dinner. I uh, just, blanket notice disclaimer: I did not watch the whole thing. I've just read about it. I've just seen snippets and etc. So take it for all of its worth. There was a few jokes that I thought were okay, were decent, kind of milk toast, I guess. But not awful. One, he said, "Is my great honor to be speaking tonight at the nation's most distinguished super spreader event. For real, what are we doing here? Did none of you learn anything from the gridiron dinner? The second someone offers you a free dinner, y'all turn it to Joe Rogan. Anthony Fauci thought it was too dangerous to come tonight. Pete Davidson thinks it's okay, and we all went with Pete." So, making a good point there, but Joe Biden did get up and say, "Hey, everyone here has been vaccinated and boosted." And that still doesn't matter because you can still spread it regardless. So if your opinion is that we do need to get back to normal life and live life, that's been my argument since forever. I think the whole entire pandemic, but there was the Great Barrington Declaration that came out in October in 2020 that did mirror my opinion about that. So I don't know, it is kind of a stark contrast for some people seeing these people in the room at the Correspondence Dinner, especially since Kamala Harris was just tested positive for it and was around other people, obviously. So they still feel confident they can go ahead and have that bit, and you know what, they should. But the issue is that they've kept all these people locked down for so long, and we're still fighting to keep people muzzled on planes. And when they question like Pete Buttigieg and other people about it, like, why are you guys going to this correspondence White House dinner while the White House is still fighting to keep people muzzled on airplanes? Like, well, it's supposed to be running out in a few days anyway. But it's like, okay, but why are you still pushing the legal challenges? And like, well, it's just important that we figure out the legal stuff anyway. It's like, you guys are just full of it, man. Absolutely full of it. Just learn to take the L sometimes, man. Just learn to take the L. Like, the court struck it down, let it be that. Try to just get back to normal. But we still want to push to have your power. I can't stand these folks. This joke was okay. I'm not doing this just for the attention. All right. I'm a comedian, not Kristen Sinema. By the way, give it up for Kristen Sinema. Whoever thought we'd see the day in American politics when a senator could be openly bisexual, but closeted Republican. That's progress. And so Sinema is not a Republican, though she is not a moron, and realizes that she is in a red-ish state that they hope to trend pretty purple. But they don't like Kristen Sinema because she's not but politically suicidal. So again, not a Republican, but you know what? That is actually a greater commentary about life, because there's plenty of people who are gay Republicans who say they had a harder time and were treated worse coming out as a Republican than they did when coming out as bisexual, gay, or whatever. And when you do come out, even if you come out as trans, people are like, "Oh, you're stunning, you're brave, you're beautiful." And like when Ellen Page came out and said that she was trans and cut off her boobs and all that other kind of stuff, and was like, "I'm gonna live as Elliot." People were, people had their who had negative say, but Ellen had magazine covers and interviews, and she's on that show on Netflix, and I heard that they were just gonna like pretend the character was a man the whole time, and I think she was bi in the first season, maybe gay in the second season, or had a lesbian, had a and in this one they're just gonna pretend that she was a man the whole. I don't know. I don't watch the Umbrella thing. That's what I heard. That's very strange. But no, you get a lot of affirmation. That's the thing people push, affirmation. But if you're a Republican, if you're conservative, something, no, they got to tear you down. So that actually speaks to like a larger sort of commentary today. Um, I thought this Madison Cawthorn joke was pretty good. I've got to say, this is so exciting to be at this swanky party full of Washington's most powerful people. It's not as exciting as Madison Cawthorn made it sound, but it's still very sexy. So I thought that was a pretty good joke, especially since if you don't know, Madison Cawthorn claimed that he saw some people doing like coke, and he got invited to like I don't know, I guess an orgy. And so he had a some people were saying he was lying. He got scolded by the Republicans, especially since they're like, well, you better name names because you're, making everybody look bad and etc. So some people just think he's exaggerating. Some people just think he's lying, and perhaps he is. But for people to dismiss that as if that doesn't happen, I think that's insane. I know it happens in my state. I know it happens in DC. So come on, don't be naive. Don't be naive. And he's a nice looking young man too. So I just wouldn't put that past him. I thought that was a pretty good joke. There's a Joe Manchin joke about him being the most powerful man in DC or in the country. This Jill Biden one was pretty decent. Even as First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden continued her teaching career, the first time a presidential spouse has done so ever. Congratulations. Now you might think it's because she loves teaching so much, but it's actually because she's still paying off her student debt. I'm sorry about that, Jill. I guess you should have voted for Bernie Sanders. People are really mad about the student loan thing right now, but Joe Biden does not have the power by the stroke of the pen, but you do have certain Democrats who are pushing for him to do an executive order to just get rid of student debt, but that's because they know they don't have the power to push it through the Congress. And by not having the power, I mean they don't have the votes. So they want Biden to just do it, and not because it will solve like the larger problem or speak to the larger issue, but they just really want to engage their base, because they know that Joe Biden is underwater everywhere, but young voters really are really upset with him right now. So not a great plan. But here's two videos I have of Trevor Noah. I'm sorry, no, I have just one video of Trevor Noah. And I have two. One, this is the ending joke that was probably the most brutal, and when I shared it, reading it sounds more brutal than how it came off, and now watching it on video as kind of like a throwaway, he doesn't seem kind of as gangster as I originally thought it was.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. Please be careful leaving tonight. We all know this administration doesn't handle evacuations well. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
So in case you missed that, he said, please be careful leaving tonight. We all know this administration doesn't handle evacuations well. So that's a pretty brutal diss to the Biden administration, bringing up Afghanistan and how that was a huge moment in the Biden administration, which really just uncovered a lot of people's eyes as far as Biden and his outlook toward people. And he wasn't just the kind grandpa. He was mean. He seemed callous, and deranged, and also just totally incapable of handling this major responsibility of being president. So that was a huge turning point in his administration. Didn't even really mention his State of the Union address. The only reason why people started talking about it because you had some uh, Congress Republican Congress people who had mentioned it kind of out of turn, and I think it was Stephen Moore who said, "I hate when people do stuff like that." But if she hadn't have done that, then no one would even be talking about or acknowledging what happened in Afghanistan. And I know why Biden didn't want to bring it up, but it is what it is, and you could at least honor those fallen at the State of the Union. So that was um, a pretty brutal joke. But again, he did say that in a sort of closing thing. I don't even know if everyone in the room could have heard that joke while they were getting up. It was very loud and stuff. So, and you obviously couldn't absorb everyone's sort of reaction to that. So not as gangster as I originally thought. Some people when I posted that quote thought it was a really good joke. Other people were just disgusted by the joke, and given the gravity of what actually happened and what actually occurred. And it is gross that it happened at all. But sometimes you do use humor to draw attention to heinous things like that. It's kind of like the court gesture can be there to make a mockery out of the king sometimes, and sometimes things get delivered in art form to open up people's eyes to things or get people talking about some stuff. I wish it wasn't kind of a throwaway line at the end, you know. It how it was designed, I suppose it was fine to be at the end, but I wish they could have really heard that joke, and I wish I could have really seen people's reaction um, to that line. But a lot of people probably thought it was super tacky in the room because they don't want Biden called out. Um, but again, I guess it was more gangster than I thought Trevor Noah was kind of capable of. But it seemed like him and other people were having a little bit more awareness of how bad Biden and everybody is, probably because there's a little bit more distance from Trump now. When people were too deranged from Trump, they just couldn't see clearly. And now that Trump hasn't been in the office for a while, it's like, oh crap. Maybe just voting out of pure spite and hatred wasn't a good plan. Now, I'm not saying they wouldn't do the same thing over again. And I think people underestimate how many people would be willing to do the exact same thing over again. But hey, we got to live with them for the next couple of years. This is the last thing I'm going to mention about it. This was Joe Biden laughing at a time when I'm not sure if he should have laughed because people are going to use this in ads. I'm certainly going to use it in videos too.
I think ever since you've come into office, things are really looking up. Gas is up, rent is up, food is up, everything. No, it really has been a tough first year for you, Mr. President. And sure.
So yeah, gas is up, rent's up, everything is up, and Biden's just like, oh, ha, ha, ha. And so I heard a Fox News commentator talking, kind of defending it, like a little bit like, well, she was in the room and he was laughing at basically just about all the jokes like that. And so, I think Faulkner was like, no, he did not laugh at every single joke. So I guess he felt maybe he had to try to pick his moments at when he should laugh a little bit at stuff. But that image of them laughing about prices and him clapping and laughing along, that's one of like the jarring sort of juxtapositions and versus like reality versus the ruling class. Kind of like Nancy Pelosi showing off her ice cream during the pandemic, I guess, sort of moment. And you could say it was a roast and a comedian was telling jokes. But But man, people still going to run their ads, and I would encourage people to take that clip, and I certainly will. I certainly do. I'll do magic with that clip. I promise you. Um, to laugh at. I mean, I think it's one of those. I think it's good that Trevor Noah told the joke. Um, it's just an uncomfortable reality. But Biden clapping along, not a great look. Not a great look at all. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on to the Biden administration's new head of misinformation, disinformation, or whatever, whatnot. And this is a person who's been really, really pushing propaganda, and people are very concerned.
Republicans are criticizing your decision, the administration's decision to choose Nina Jankowicz to lead this disinformation board. They say she is not somebody who is neutral. Your response?
Eminently qualified, a renowned expert in the field of disinformation. Absolutely so.
Okay, this chick is absolutely not neutral in the least bit. That is a lie. Like Amari gets out the lie detector test, and woman runs screaming because he's not the father kind of lie. She's there's a video that emerged from her singing like a Mary Poppins song, and if you've been watching the news or listening to Fox or Tim Cast or anything, you've probably heard her Mary Poppins singing, so I won't strain your ears or whatever. She's a decent theater student, I guess, but she took the Mary Poppins supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and she paired it with fighting against misinformation. But the song itself was misinformation because she talked about like the laptop and Rudy Giuliani going to Ukraine and other kind of stuff. But that was true stuff. But she was a pusher of misinformation. She's one of those people pushing that it was like Russian disinformation, but of course it absolutely was true. And even the CIA people who sign on to the laptop saying it was misinformation lied. They lied for the sake of Joe Biden getting in office. Now, sometimes I guess people don't care about telling lies. Well, I guess a lot of times people don't care about getting lies when they get what they want. Like Harry Reid lied about Mitt Romney not paying taxes, and they're like, "Hey, that was a lie." He's like, "I don't care. He's not president now." Like that. The goal was the lie. They got what they achieved. The truth isn't the goal. That's not the end game. So I question what the end game is with the Biden administration making this. And so Jen Psaki was asked about her as well.
She had previously called the Hunter Biden laptop a Trump campaign product, seeming to discredit its validity or validity of reporting surrounding that. How can you assuage concerns of people who are looking at this person who's been appointed to this position and wondering if she's going to be able to accurately judge misinformation now that a lot of that reporting has been proven to be factual in some ways?
Well, I don't have any comments on the laptop, but what I can tell you is that it sounds like the objective of the board is to prevent disinformation and misinformation from traveling around the country in a range of communities. I'm not sure who opposes that effort.
I bet you don't have any darn comment on the laptop, Jen. She dodged the crap out of it when she could. And when people bring up, she's like, Hunter's a private citizen. And even when people are like, well, what about stuff you said? Or what about stuff the president said about it? She would try to dodge the crap out. She's like, well, just talk to DHS or talk to the FBI or talk to everybody but me, because I don't want to talk about the fact that we've been caught red-handed in our lie. So this administration has been a purveyor of misinformation and just blatant lies. And I did ask people to tell me their top like Biden lies, because I am going to make like a, I don't know, top 10 video or something. But some that I can name. Biden pushed the bounty hunter story, and when after Trump and the White House were like, it's not true, like the intel's not there, like this is a lie. And then Biden and them pushed it like during the campaign trail. And when Biden became president, they looked at the intel, they're like, oh, I guess Trump and them were telling the truth. And they're like, well, Jen, do you have anything to say? And she's like, no, no apologies necessary. And I'm like, you purposely made it so the American people had less trust in the president. Like you have no respect for the office, at least a little bit, to be a little sympathetic. Of course they don't. Of course they don't, because they don't respect the office unless their guy's in there. Period. Or one of my favorites is the Jen Psaki tried to spin that Republicans were the ones against defunding the police. And you might be scratching your head and saying, how is that possible? Well, Jen Psaki pointed out that the COVID relief bill, the big one that they passed, was full of stuff that people could have used the funding for toward funding police, and no Republican voted for it. Now, mind you, it wasn't a bill meant to fund the police. It was a bill that was meant to fund COVID relief. And the Republicans didn't want to vote for it because it clearly wasn't a COVID relief bill. And people didn't care. They're like, oh, the Republicans are so mean because they don't want to vote for COVID relief. And since they didn't, Jen is saying that, that these funds that could be used for just about anything could possibly hypothetically be used for funding the police. And she's like, well, it was a very good bill. So because they didn't mind read whatever state and county or whatever was going to do with the money, Republicans are the ones who are anti-funding the police. That is some straight up crazy spinning top spin. But that's the kind of misinformation that the White House pushes. So, and of course, there was all the stuff they were saying about the laptop before and afterwards, before the election and after the election. So this administration pushing a misinformation or disinformation board, governance board, is just laughable. But to have also this particular person, I've said this quite a bit, but it seems like this administration picks people to troll the American people, like having Dr. Rachel Levin as the assistant health secretary, knowing that he botched Pennsylvania and intermixed nursing home people with COVID patients and got his own mother out. Like that would be the worst person that you would actually nominate for that position. But they did anyway. And I don't think it's just merely to check out this person is trans box, look at how inclusive we are. I think it's really to throw a middle finger at the American people or anyone who doesn't like them. Or do you have Becerra, who they picked and their name to fame is suing nuns? And you could say, well, he didn't directly sue the nuns. Like, well, he sued the Trump administration. Well, he sued the Trump administration because the Trump administration was protecting the Little Sisters of the Poor because they didn't want to give abortion pills to people. So why would you pick them? They didn't even have like public health experience. So it's just like they're coming after American folks, and they want to just show you how much they hate you and how much they're trolling you. Like the right memes and the left just destroys. The right will troll with memeing, and they'll just to troll you by sending in the trolls with their clubs and just destroying everything you love, and then they'll laugh about it. That's what it seems like. That's what it seems like. Another thing that Nina Jankowicz, she pushed the Russia collusion stuff. She there's a tweet of her like retweeting the Hillary campaign's ties and stuff, claiming, and the Hillary campaign, of course, is the one who's really behind the Russia collusion stuff. And she said, Trump's Kremlin ties don't end at Manafort. This is serious, people, with the clapping emojis in between. So of course that stuff wasn't true. There was Brian Stelter, of course, said some wackadoodle things over the weekend about it. Let's go ahead and watch him talk.
Yes, there's been an uproar in recent days about the Department of Homeland Security setting up what they call a disinformation governance board. This has been mostly a Fox World story. It could come up earlier today on CNN State of the Union, but I don't think people know what it is and what it isn't. And there's just been a lot of right-wing uproar without knowing what it is. So are you aware of this at all? What is this all about?
Aware of it, and I think the first thing is that it's a board, exactly as we say. It is meant to bring together people to coordinate a lot of the efforts inside of DHS. That means law enforcement, that means emergency services like FEMA. They've all been doing counter disinformation efforts for a while to give us accurate information about human rights abuses, but also about disasters and where people can get assistance. So coordinating that activity, making it speak with one voice, and being a stronger advocate to tech companies and engaging the public and academia, that's really what they're after.
But hold on, that sounds like common sense. But when I Google this, all I see is like Joe Biden's Ministry of Truth, and they're going to steal, like there's this incredible backlash to something that sounds like basic government bureaucracy.
It is basic government bureaucracy.
Okay, here's a question. When is basic government bureaucracy like a good thing? Like the government is like notoriously known for bad things, like doing a bad job at stuff. You know, like with the COVID tests and stuff. They'd send it to you what was it, like 14, at least 14 days or something, like in a time period that you could already not have it anymore. You know, they're just the Obamacare website spent a lot of money for it to crash and not work, like just famously bad at just doing anything. So then to say it's just basic government bureaucracy, I don't know why that's supposed to comfort anyone. And there's a lot of reasons why this could go wrong, but let's keep watching.
And around the world, what we're asking for governments to do is to step up more and to play a bigger role in advocating for people. The big litmus test is civil society included? Is the media included? And so far, everything we've heard about the board, which is new and just started, shows us that that is the intention, is to be fully transparent and to demand more from our government in terms of how they protect us from disinformation and enable us to have information that protects our country and advances our ability to survive in a major incident, for instance.
So here's the question: who gets to decide that? And it's a real problem if you have someone biased controlling the information and labeling something as true and not true when they themselves is prone to pushing untrue things because they can't see beyond their own political bias, which is true for this person who'd be running it. So they're saying, oh, they're just so qualified, oh, they're neutral. It's just not true. It's just not true. Here's a article, something that was written. NPR did a piece, and they went to this expert and this is the person who's going to be over the board talking about, and this was in regard to like women being harassed online. So we need the platforms to do more. We frankly need law enforcement and our legislatures to do more as well. And in other countries, they are looking at this. You know, in the UK has online safety bill that's been considered right now, where they're trying to make it illegal. This currently, quote, awful but lawful content that exists online where people are being harassed. So in what regard, first of all, government coming against your free speech like that, not supposed to be happening. So there's people who think this stuff will get struck down in the courts very quickly. I think the purpose of this board is to label certain things as true and false, and to be sort of like how the fact checkers are online. Like, well, I'll share something on Facebook and Facebook will be like, oh, there's an article, it has nothing to do with what you wrote actually, but it sounds like something that you wrote, so we're going to label this as false. And that's happened, by the way. And they're like, well, the fact checker said this, so we're going to ding you down and we're going to make your page less visible to folks, and we're going to rate it low. And tamper down your engagement, etc., because you're not a trustworthy source. I think that's what the government wants to do on a larger scale. And then you'll probably have some group like Facebook, for example, that wants to be all friendly with these big government powers that'll be like, oh, you know what? That was labeled as false. So you can't actually post things like, let's use Hunter Biden's laptop for an example, because this particular person who's over it believed that it was misinformation. So we know that Twitter at the time blocked your ability to share and stuff. But let's say they labeled it misinformation. You had all these experts that got on and said that it was Russian misinformation or disinformation or whatever. And they're like, if you talk about it, then we're going to give you a strike on your account. And maybe Facebook will do that too. I guess Twitter won't, because Elon Musk is going to be taking the company in like 3 to 6 months when it closes, their deal closes, and it'll be a private company. But I don't think that'll stop the government from trying to take the reins. That's why they're really upset about Elon Musk, because they want to control the way information flows. And they knew that they had people on their side who would limit free speech in the way that the government thought was acceptable. So now that Elon has it, that's freaked out so many people, and they really do think it's a threat. They're saying it's a threat to democracy, which we're not a democracy in the U.S., by the way. Democracy is what the wolves voting to eat sheep or something, whatever the saying is. So there's a reason why we're not a pure democracy. But and the reason why we're not a pure democracy is exactly what's wrong with this disinformation campaign. Because if you control how information goes, you can manipulate the masses very quickly into what you want, rather than it being a good representation of what's good for Americans. And you can easily have a tyrannical majority terrorizing the minority. So it's a good thing that we're not a democracy. But they're upset because they cannot control information the way that they want, and it frightens them. It absolutely terrifies them. CNN's David Zurich said that it was dangerous with Elon buying Twitter, and he went on a crazy rant. I wish I had remembered to download this for you guys. But he said, you need regulation. You cannot let these guys control discourse in this country, or we are headed to hell. We are there. Trump opened the gates of hell, and now they're chasing us down. It was really a remarkable thing. I did retweet it. I'll probably play it tomorrow. I just forgot to download it for you guys, but it's crazy how hysterical these people are. And Elon Musk is just saying, we want free speech. And he's saying, I want my critics on it to use Twitter. And you know, it's going to make maybe the right's going to be upset sometimes, maybe the left's going to be upset sometimes, but like that 80% is like the sweet spot. And it's really important for, he used the word democracies, but again, we're not a democracy, but it is a global website. He said it's really good for our democracy to have free speech, and Twitter wasn't doing that before. Millions of people voted on his page that Twitter wasn't meeting those standards. He knew Babylon Bee got censored for saying that Rachel Levin is a man, which Rachel Levin is a man. Just the facts are the facts. But that is like hate speech to Twitter, etc. You can't even speak the truth. So that's why he moved. That's why he acted. And it's freaking out the left. It's freaking out the left that they can't control information. And that's it. Don't you find it suspicious? Don't you find it suspicious that when Elon decided to make this move, that's when Obama decided to have a speech about disinformation and how we need to censor more stuff. And then Biden announces that we're going to have this board. Like, this is their retaliation to them losing their biggest, shiniest toy. They adored Twitter and the way the way that they could control information and shut down something like the Hunter Biden laptop story. And if you're saying, well, that story wasn't that important, if it wasn't important, they wouldn't have shut it down. I'm old enough to remember when a story about Bush being drunk back in the day was enough to scare people out of him not possibly winning his election. I'm old enough to remember that. So him getting paid 10% from Hunter Biden's business dealings, which he claimed he knew nothing about. I think that's a pretty big deal. And it's a pretty big deal because we do not know what Hunter Biden was getting paid for as far as all of his access and what was being promised and why they felt like that he was worthy of such deals. So if you can't see why it was an important story, I don't know what to tell you guys. But that was something they felt that they needed to censor. And they'll continue censoring important information, but also pushing other narratives as well. So I think that's why they want this board, so they can just make these bigger fact checkers, and then other friendlies like at Facebook and YouTube or something will probably be like, well, this is what's stated by the disinformation board. Therefore, we got to mark this down, or get you a strike on your account or something like that. And looking how they weaponize the CDC for content on YouTube, don't tell me it's far-fetched. As a matter of fact, I've had 2 strikes, which I think they've maybe fallen off now, over COVID content. Now, I did request that YouTube tells me specifically what I said that went against CDC guidelines, and of course they don't respond back to you. They're just like, "Oh, your appeal failed, you suck, and we're not going to do anything about it." And so one week the first time I couldn't post at all for a week, and then the second time it was a 2-week thing. So, but the 2 things that they ding me on were both related to Canada. So the first one was a story I did a video about in Canada at the Ronald McDonald House, how they were kicking out or relocating kids with COVID. And so I got dinged on that from YouTube. Why, I don't know. I don't know. And in the second time, I was talking about Justin Trudeau and the trucker thing. And I think the episode was called like "Never Go Full Tyrant" or something like that. And I don't even think I talked about COVID information really in the episode, but they dinged me and gave me a strike for that. So these social media companies really, really, really stretched and reached. And maybe with like other bigger conservative accounts, like if they try to do that to Steven Crowder's account, he has like direct sort of lines to YouTube, and a lawyer who has battled with them a lot. Like they can't just ding them as much as they want, because they're gonna get some fight back there. You can help black teen news grow, but I'm just kind of not there. So I was at a more vulnerable state for them to try to censor me in that way, and they did. And they did, and they'll continue to do that to medium counts, smaller counts, or wherever they can get away with it. So if they weaponize the CDC, again, I don't think Facebook really thought that I said anything that was against CDC guidelines, and I didn't say anything that was against CDC guidelines. And regardless, if it was against CDC guidelines, I didn't say anything in my videos that were untrue, especially in regard to the COVID topic. And so many people switched their positions about stuff, or the science changed, or they found out new information, etc. I don't know how it's moral to have censored people on those particular topics, but social media did. So it's not far-fetched that they'll try to do the same with this board. And I think that's actually the true intention of this board, because they are scared of real information. They're just afraid of discussions, people having discussions. So this is awful. This should not stand in the United States of America. I hope it's struck down, like in the courts, something goes down and they start marking stuff. I don't know. But the Biden administration has really, really, really been pushing crazy stuff for a very long time. So we'll see where all this goes. Let's move on to the Amber Heard story. Amber Heard, just really quickly, has fired her PR firm staff. And so the Washington Free Beacon had a pretty interesting article about it. Another Obama failure. Amber Heard fires PR team run by former White House aides. Embattled actress Amber Heard fired her public relations team last week after complaining that her story was not being told effectively, according to the New York Post. Heard, who was being sued by ex-husband Johnny Depp for defamation, cut ties with the Precision Strategies, the PR firm founded by 3 veterans of the former President Barack Obama's reelection campaign: Stephanie Cutter, Jen O'Malley Dillon, and Teddy Goff. Cutter, who served as a deputy campaign manager for Obama's 2012 campaign, has also worked with President Joe Biden as chief program executive of the 2020 Democrat National Convention, as executive producer of the 2021 presidential inauguration. Goff served as digital director of Obama's reelection campaign and stayed on as a member of the presidential transition team before co-founding Precision Strategies. Dillon, another Obama alum, left the firm to manage Biden's campaign in 2020 and currently serves as White House Deputy Chief of Staff. Heard's decision to fire the firm for its inability to thwart bad headlines is merely the most recent consequence of Obama's failed presidency. It is also the most recent example of Democratic strategies advising dubious characters. Biden advisor Anita Dunn, who also worked for Obama, provided damage control advice to Harvey Weinstein, the disgraced Hollywood rapist. Liz Smith, who served as communications director for Pete Buttigieg in 2020, advised disgraced former Governor Andrew Cuomo and his staff regarding allegations of sexual assault against the one-time Democratic superstar. Depp's defamation suit concerns a 2018 Washington Post op-ed in which Heard claimed to have been a victim of domestic violence. It was recently revealed that communication strategies at the ACLU, a left-leaning activist group, were heavily involved in drafting the op-ed on Heard's behalf. So that is true. The ACLU, which Amber Heard has apparently given quite a bit to, but it was interesting in the trial, it came out that quite a bit of the money in Heard's name was actually given to ACLU by Johnny Depp. I think there was like 100,000 from Depp and like maybe 500,000 from Elon Musk in her name from Amber. There was controversy in the trial because she promised to give them quite a bit of money from her divorce settlement. I guess a lot of people believed her outright because she was willing to give her divorce settlement money to charity. But that money has not been realized. So people are like, oh my gosh, this is disgusting. This is awful. She didn't pay all the money that she said that she would pledge to charity. But the ACLU, it wasn't the lawyers who drafted it, but there was people in the comms department of the ACLU helped to draft that op-ed that she released about being a domestic violence victim. So that's interesting. I don't know how many people picked that up last week when that was revealed, but they did have an ACLU lawyer testify for quite a bit. I did watch that testimony. Yeah, there's some dubious people within the Obama administration went on to advise some other dubious people about certain strategies, but I remember the Weinstein thing, and I do also remember that the Pete Buttigieg communications person being associated with Andrew Cuomo and advising him on his sexual assault scandals, which, by the way, it seems like Andrew Cuomo is trying to test the waters to see if he's going to be able to run again because he is like cutting ads. I think the biggest problem with Amber Heard, though, is her lawyers, not so much the PR firms and stuff. Because, I mean, she's not going to win her case based on public opinion. Though public opinion is out to ruin the rest of her career, I suppose. They are trying to get her replaced on Aquaman. But that petition's been going on for a while, but it's gotten new life for sure during the trial. So I understand an actress wanting to be very concerned about her PR, and if they're awful terrible, whatever, she should fire them, no doubt. But I think her problem is her lawyers. And I mean, there was a time that he like objected to something that he said himself. It's almost like watching Liar Liar. And I don't think Amber Heard's going to be able to defeat this sort of like TikTok mob of people who are cutting like really good videos, funny videos of Johnny Depp sort of like trolling folks, you know. On one hand, you have like these testimonies and audios or whatever, and just her calling him a fat, irrelevant old man, versus all these people who've known Johnny Depp for a long time, have loved him in all of his sort of roles, but also seeing him being charismatic and funny, humorous within his trial. So, if the most important thing now, I mean, she's had her lawyer, she can't fire them in the middle of the trial, is to I don't know, come off as human when she gives her testimony, because she just, you know, her testimony, like when all these people are just talking, she's just kind of looking like, you know, and it's just not a good look. And they probably should have advised her to not have resting bleep face during her testimony. I think those are her problems. She can blame it on her PR firm, and again, the PR firm's probably not doing a great job. Maybe they can come out with good TikToks and stuff too, but they are she's not in good shape, I would say. Not in good shape. Not in the least bit. Last story I wanted to cover before I go today is this story about schools are really, really losing a lot of kids. And if you're unaware, budgets are also tied to the head counts at different schools. So this is from the AP. Mission, Kansas, a school system in suburban Kansas City, is eliminating over 100 jobs, including kindergarten aides and library clerks. Oakland, California is closing 7 schools. Other districts around the country are merging classrooms, selling buildings, leaving teaching positions unfilled in order to close budget gaps. Public school systems are beginning to feel the pinch from enrollment losses tied to the coronavirus pandemic. Money for schools is driven partly by student hand counts, and emergency provisions in many states allowed schools to maintain funding at pre-pandemic levels. But like the billions of dollars of federal relief money that have helped schools weather the crisis, those measures were not meant to last forever. In Off Lake, Kansas, where the school system is cutting 140 jobs, Deputy Superintendent John Hutchinson said the extra federal money merely put off the inevitable. Now it is trimming millions of dollars from its budgets because enrollment, having peaked at more than 30,000 students in fall of 2019, fell by 900 in the first full school year of the pandemic. Less than 100 of those students have returned. Where did those kids go? Hutchinson asked during a recent public meeting. Where are they? They didn't come back this year. That's what's laying on the additional reduction of our funding. Families opting for homeschooling, private school, and other options sent enrollment down sharply in the first full school year of the pandemic, and generally it has been slow to recover. In Houston, the largest district in Texas, enrollment tumbled by more than 22,000 to around 183,000 in fall of 2021, and only about half of those students have returned. The district was shielded from making cuts in the first 2 years of the pandemic by what are known as harmless provisions, but those protections are expected to end. Superintendent Millard House has asked departments to cut $60 million from next year's budget, and it goes on. It's really hitting states hard, school districts hard, and I'm not surprised. You played with these parents, you played with these kids. In other countries, they knew for a very long time that kids were not really catching COVID, or they weren't really spreading it, that they weren't having a lot of big outbreaks and stuff. And you had the teachers unions in the US who were just so gung-ho about staying closed, doing virtual. There was one viral like teacher who was like, oh, we need to stay closed and stuff, but then like snapshot of her on vacation. So there was just a lot of hypocrisy going around, and parents just like scared out of their mind for their kids, not knowing the data that their kids were least likely to be harmed from COVID. Like, it's something that is enormously, the losses are toward an elderly population, and you don't want the kids to spread it to grandmas and stuff like that, but there just hasn't been a lot of evidence that the super spreaders are really much of the kids. But then when you had the vaccines go out to the elderly, you know, and then they knew that you could still catch and spread it. it doesn't make sense that you had adults that felt like they could go out and be free, but the kids were, it's such a harm and a risk. Like there was that picture of Stacey Abrams where she's not masked, but all the kids around her are masked. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And it's really a show of force, I think, in a lot of cases. Because it's not common sense, and it never was common sense. But you know what? A lot of people are so used to the mask thing, and I don't really think that much is about health. I think they're definitely paranoid. But I gotta give you this example. Yesterday, yesterday for dinner, after church, me and some of my sisters went to a local Qdoba. And so when I got my food and stuff, got my cup for my drink and stuff, I, was looking around for a straw, had the top, I saw the top, so I didn't see any straws. So I'm looking around, and there was box, wasn't in the box and stuff. I'm like, where's the straws? So I called one of the employees over. I'm like, I don't see any straws. And they're like, oh, don't you see a box? I'm like, this box is full of napkins. And so they look around and they come back and they're like, oh, and so, there's like different cubbies, and the cubbies might have like the different tops in there. Well, at the bottom cubby, he's like, oh, they're clear. That's why you couldn't see them. So yeah, lo and behold, the straws were like in front of me the whole time, but I couldn't really see them because it was a black cubby and they're clear. And I reach inside the cubby, and the straws, they're not in like white paper coverings like straws normally are individually wrapped, nor are they in plastic individually wrapped. They are just free falling in the cubby. They're just free falling in the cubby. And normally you would put straws like that in some kind of dispenser or something where you click on a button or something and they fall through, and hopefully the dispenser is clean. But in my mind, I see the straws just sitting there in the cubby. And when I reached in to feel that there was no plastic covering them, I'm like, okay, my hands have touched this. Other hands have touched this. So there's dozens of hands that have touched these straws, if not hundreds or whatever. So I'm just like, that's gross. I'm not going to drink it this way. I'll just, drink it like you would every other cup in your house, right? So we sit down and we start eating. There's this white couple, man and woman, who've come in for their food. They got their food. They use their hand sanitizer, whatever. They're very conscious. They have the masks, not N95s, those masks that if you buy them and look on the box, it says does not protect you from COVID-19. That's who these people are, right? They're wearing these masks. So I'm watching intently now. I'm watching intently because I want to know if these people are going to use these straws. So I'm just captivated watching these people, and when they're looking for the straws, and they look down and realize that they are in the cubby. And what do? They reach in, they take their straws, and they both put them in their cups. These people who are masked in the restaurant, no one else was masked, just these two people, just these two people take the straws that have been touched by all these hands, untold amount of hands that include my hands, by the way, and they put their straws in their drinks. So all of these germs are intermingling with their Cokes and whatnot, and they are, because they didn't have any juice in the thing. So whatever they got, I believe maybe it was Cokes or whatever. And they drank it and went on their way with all these germs. And I'm just like, these COVID people who are wearing these masks, who are so obsessed about catching it or not catching it or whatever. I don't know why they're so still bold about wearing these masks. When you look on the box, it says that does not prevent you from catching COVID-19. Or they use these straws. And you could say, well, maybe they weren't concerned about getting COVID. Maybe they had COVID. They were just wearing the mask to protect everyone else, which was always a terrible thing, because if you really feel like there's a chance that you have COVID, you should probably just stay at home, right? But I guess you have to assume the risk and participate in society or whatever. They still touch the straws themselves and continued with the spread. So my point is, I don't know how much these people are just thinking things through versus just being accustomed to doing what they're told. So I just want to share that story. I wanted to share that story because that's the world we're living in. People are just so accustomed to just pushing the COVID stuff without even thinking anything through in the least bit. Even now, even today. But I am glad that you do see it less when people when it was announced on airplanes that they no longer had to wear the mask. People were excited. There were like stewardesses and folks working on the airplanes that were happy. People bursting into song. Although I know Ilhan Omar isn't fond of that, people were singing happily on airplanes about not having to be muzzled anymore. Though the Biden administration is trying to fight that for some odd reason while they're having a correspondence dinner. Whatever. Maybe one day the Disinformation Governance Board will scold them. Not likely. Thank you guys for joining in today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to blacktnews.com and check out different content that I have on the website, different articles, different videos that I have. Please check out different merchandise like the goat hoodies and the goat t-shirts. I do have them in different colors as well. This shirt, denounced white supremacy defeat Joe Biden shirt, got a bump over the weekend because I did a TikTok and listed it because people tried to have Trump people are racist, etc. No, I think it started because someone tried to check me for voting for Trump, like he degrades women. And I'm like, I'm not gonna make an argument that Trump doesn't say some misogynistic things, not in the least bit. But I mean, if y'all want to argue that, y'all can argue that, but I'm not wasting my time arguing that. But I'm like, usually when he has a beef with someone like Rosie O'Donnell or someone, it's very specific. But did you vote for Joe Biden, who degraded Black people constantly? Like, did you do that? And I could bring receipts. And I specifically mentioned in the video the "you ain't Black" comment, but there are more. And on this shirt, it does have a list of some of Joe Biden's racist stuff on the back. So people like that shirt, and they're probably glad to have those facts to trigger the libs. They got those in short sleeves and long sleeves. The long sleeves shirt is pretty comfortable, I got to say. That's the one that I have myself. And I also have like the I'm not the victim you're looking for, and the "Be Better Not Bitter" shirt. Really like that shirt. Today someone asked me why Black people should not be bitter about stuff that's happened in the past, and they believe that people are still impacted by racism of the past and etc. And I can't argue with that totally, but to what degree leftists are talking about, I don't know. Like, do I believe that you have trauma from slavery? No. I think someone traumatized you, and that's unfortunate that someone passed on that sort of abuse to you. Do I believe that there's been some heinous acts within the nation by some heinous people to hurt the African American community? I think so, and I explained that. I mentioned a book, Color, Communism, Common Sense by Manning Johnson. I've mentioned it several times. But communists wanted to use Black people. Manning Johnson is a Black man. He defected from the Communist Party. But they wanted to use Black people for grievance culture. And they had like legitimate things at the time because this happened. He wrote this years ago. It's an old book, so there was like legitimate things people could be upset about. But your pro-Blackness could never supersede communism. And even times when Black people tried to be independent about things, they would go around convincing them like, no, you shouldn't have to accumulate your money and buy your own hospital or something like that. People owe you things. And so it was their goal to basically make Black people like a problematic trash sort of group. So they could keep using racial grievances to keep pushing communism. Now think about BLM, who are trained Marxists, and one of their founding what we are about principles is to disrupt the nuclear family. What kind of pro-Black group trying to help the Black community would be against the nuclear family? That would solve probably 90% of the problems in the Black community if if we didn't have so many children born out of wedlock, if we didn't have so many fatherless homes, etc., because that leads to a whole different mess of problems with poverty, crime, etc. So I said I'm not against people learning about slavery. I think people should learn about eugenics in this country, and which, if you look at abortion, etc., Planned Parenthood, and the results of today, and the disproportionate amount of Black people who are aborted, I think it's important for people to know that. And also communism. I said these things are important to learn, but there's folks that they're aligned with who don't want people to know certain things because they're pushing a particular narrative. And if you do something that's productive, then they label it as signs of whiteness. And I'm not joking. If you're a person who believes in the nuclear family, if you're a person who believes in private property, if you believe that intent matters, if you believe in Judeo-Christian values, if you believe in being on time, if you believe in respecting authority, those are traits of whiteness. And you may think I'm joking, but the Smithsonian, particularly the African American History Museum, put out this graphic some time ago about white culture in the United States. And you can see part of that is independence and autonomy, highly valued, rewarded. The nuclear family, objective, rational, linear thinking. Oh, that was my favorite. I mean, the favorite thing that I hated that they put on there. That was just remarkable. Like, this document is the most racist thing I've ever seen. If this is the first time you're seeing it, you can Google it. But this is what people are talking about, like, is whiteness culture in the United States. So if you have a Black person who doesn't like fit sort of these things, that's okay. But expecting them to have these traits would be bad because these are traits of whiteness. So objective, linear, rational thinking is whiteness culture. Hard work is the key to success. Christianity the norm. Wealth equals worth. Your job is who you are. Respect authority. Heavy value on ownership of goods. Planning for the future. Follow rigid time schedules. Tell Asians that that's a sign of whiteness, following rigid schedules. I know that was a bit stereotypical, but come on. Progress is always best. Tomorrow will be better. That's just freaking optimism. Optimism is whiteness. Women's beauty. No, this man's attractiveness based on economic status and power. If you're attracted to people with good jobs, it's a sign of whiteness, man. Justice. Protect property and entitlements. That intent counts. That's crazy. Competition. Be number one. Win at all costs. Winner loser dichotomy. Be polite is the last one on here. Being polite is a sign of whiteness. Okay. Yeah, so there's an example. So you have to look at people who would make such a thing like that and are pushing these sort of labels. So when you hear people on the left talk about how whiteness is bad and how we need to reject whiteness, like the Washington Post did this big video about it. If you haven't seen it, I did a rebuttal to it, or a reaction to, rather. I did rebut it while I reacted. But you can go ahead to Black Tea News or my YouTube page, find it and watch it, or my Facebook. I know I posted it. Go watch it. It's absolutely insane. But when people talk about whiteness and how we need to reject whiteness, you need to understand what they're talking about. You need to understand what they're talking about. So I like to think that most of these things are actually good traits, but they're trying to label it as something bad. Why are they doing that? So yeah, I do. I'm not on the train of like we should just reject all sort of racial things in this country about like systemic racism or whatever. Like, I don't like that term or whatever. It's so broad. It's really like a catch-all for a lot of things. But there is like a long con that's been going on in the nation for a very long time. And I guess I'll talk about that more later. But the folks who scream the loudest about these injustices are the ones who push for more injustice. They're the bad guys. They're the bad guys. So why shouldn't you be bitter? Because the bitter, the more bitter and angry you are, the easier you are to control. And there's some pretty nefarious people who want you to be bitter and angry so they can control you for their own political gains. And the more of an individual, productive individual you are, the more power you have. And that's what people are trying to destroy. So it's my 2 cents. I'm going to close it out. Again, if you enjoy what I do here, blackteennews.com, consider going to blackteennews.com/donate and pick up some merch and make sure that you guys are sharing, that you're liking, that you're subscribing. God bless you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.